What if I told you that the President of the United States, with all the global power, the motorcades, the nuclear codes, what if that person is actually just a beggar?
I mean, it sounds like a completely absurd premise when you first hear it.
Right. It
Yeah.
totally does. And what if I also told you that 95% of humanity, and yeah, that very likely includes you and me, are basically just hamsters running on a wheel of what this author calls vulgarity?
It is definitely not pulling any punches, that's for sure.
No, not at all. So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a highly provocative essay from January 2024. It's titled, Spiritual Aristocrats Are the Hope of Humanity.
Yeah, written by Xu Feng and translated by Qingyu.
Exactly. And our mission today is to explore this framework that, honestly, it completely dismantles our dictionary definition of what it means to be an aristocrat.
It really does. It replaces it with this philosophy that's focused on absolute, uncompromising spiritual independence, especially in a world that is just totally obsessed with status.
Yeah, the premise immediately forces us to, re-examine the hierarchies we all just take for granted every day.
For sure. But before we begin, it probably helps to contextualize the source material a bit.
Good idea.
The text is deeply philosophical. It mentions specific spiritual doctrines, particularly revolving around a community called the Lifechanyuan. And I want to be clear, our objective today is not to, evaluate or endorse that specific community or their beliefs.
Right, we're just here to impartially analyze the underlying ideas the author's presenting to us.
Exactly, because the text operates as this really intense psychological mirror. By redefining terms like aristocrat and beggar, it kind of forces us to look at human nature.
Oh, yeah.
And, the subtle pressures of society and those invisible psychological traps we fall into when we chase what culture defines as success.
And that psychological mirror is incredibly stark from the very first page. To understand why spiritual aristocrats are positioned as the hope of humanity, we have to look at how the author completely throws out our normal understanding of the word aristocrat.
Right, because usually we think of inherited wealth.
Yeah, exactly. A traditional aristocrat inherits titles, land, immense wealth, special legal privileges. They're defined by this external fortress of power, basically.
But this text argues that those people aren't aristocrats at all.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
Instead, a true spiritual aristocrat is someone who is, noble in spirit. They are radically independent and absolutely immune to being manipulated by power or capital, cultural customs, or just the shifting trends of the world.
The author draws a really hard, unforgiving line here. In this framework, the fortress isn't made of stone, right? It's entirely internal.
Yeah.
The text makes this bold claim that more than 95% of people are hopelessly swept away by the pursuit of money and status.
It's a huge number.
It is. And the claim is that if you follow traditional societal rules, if you chase material wealth, or if you simply let yourself be carried along by the cultural tide of the times, the text categorizes you as vulgar.
Which is such a loaded word.
It is. But vulgarity, in this sense, isn't about being rude or unrefined like swearing at a dinner party.
Right.
It means being common. It means surrendering your internal sovereignty to external forces, which leaves you completely unable to reach the realm of a true aristocrat.
Okay, I have to pause here and challenge the sheer scale of that claim.
Go for it.
Categorizing 95% of the human race as vulgar simply for participating in culture. It feels a little dismissive of how civilization actually functions,
That's a fair point.
because we are fundamentally social, interdependent creatures, following cultural norms, seeking financial stability to protect our families, building a career. These aren't just trivial trends people chase because they're weak-willed.
No, they're survival mechanisms.
Exactly. Human interdependence built the modern world. So I guess my question is it even possible or desirable to be entirely immune to the culture you live in?
Well, what's fascinating here is that tension is exactly what makes the essay so compelling. We generally view culture, economic systems, and the pursuit of stability as the neutral water we swim in.
Right.
It's just the background noise of life.
But the author views these systems not as neutral environments, but as active, insidious manipulators.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The argument here is that the moment you buy into society's definition of success, whether that means securing the corner office, buying a home in a prestigious zip code, or curating a perfect public image, you are unknowingly handing over the keys to your internal fortress.
So you're giving them the power.
Exactly. You are allowing an external system to dictate your internal state of peace and self-worth.
So you basically become a hostage to the things you acquire.
Precisely the point the text makes. To be immune to culture, in the author's view, doesn't mean you have to physically remove yourself from society and go live in the woods.
Right.
It means your sense of dignity is completely decoupled from society's rewards or punishments.
Yeah.
You can exist in the world, but you remain untouchable by the shifting winds of societal expectations. You just don't need society to tell you that you matter. Okay, let's unpack this absolute rejection of societal norms, because it forces a massive redefinition of the entire social hierarchy.
It really does.
Because if you're rejecting these norms to become a spiritual aristocrat, the text doesn't call the opposite of an aristocrat a commoner or a peasant. It uses a much sharper word.
Yeah, this is where it gets really intense.
It says the opposite of a spiritual aristocrat is a beggar. And the definition of a beggar here is astonishingly broad. According to the essay, a beggar is anyone who has any demands on the outside world.
Any demands at all. And the strictness of that definition is really the core engine of this entire philosophy.
It's so extreme.
It is. A beggar isn't just someone asking for spare change on the street. In this framework, a beggar is anyone who operates from a state of deficit.
Yeah.
Anyone who needs external validation or favors to feel secure.
And the examples the author uses to illustrate this are clearly designed to make you uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely.
The text states that a rich man who relies on government officials to maintain his wealth is a beggar. An entrepreneur who bribes bank employees for a loan is a beggar.
Yeah.
A university professor who bows to a principal or a board of directors just to secure a promotion. That person is a beggar.
It spares no one.
It really doesn't. And going back to our introduction, even a sitting president who has demands on the people is categorized as a thorough beggar. If you flatter, fawn, bribe, kneel, compromise, or just hold expectations of others, the author argues you are trampling on your own dignity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it forces us to look at the mechanics of power from a completely different angle.
How so?
Well, we traditionally assume that a president or a billionaire holds all the cards, right? They have immense geopolitical and financial influence.
Obviously.
But let's break down the author's logic regarding the president. To maintain their position, a president has to constantly campaign, pander to different demographics, compromise their core ideals just to pass legislation, and obsessively monitor public opinion polls.
It's a never-ending cycle of needing approval.
Exactly. Their entire existence in power is dependent on the approval of the masses. They're constantly in a state of asking. Asking for votes, asking for donations, asking for a favorable legacy.
Wow. Okay.
So from the perspective of a spiritual aristocrat, that constant need for external approval is a state of severe spiritual poverty.
That flips the script entirely.
Yeah.
It suggests that having ambition is actually a form of subservience.
It does.
Like, take the university professor example.
Right.
We usually view a professor striving for a promotion or tenure as someone showing admirable dedication.
Right. Working hard, playing by the rules.
Yeah, but this text argues that by tying their professional self-worth and financial security to the subjective opinion of a tenure committee, they're willingly entering a master-servant dynamic.
Yes.
They have to play politics, maybe laugh at jokes they don't find funny, or tailor their research to please the board. The moment your ambition requires another human being to say yes, you've given them power over your dignity.
The author creates this rigid binary. You either maintain total self-reliance, which elevates you to an aristocrat, or you allow yourself to depend on external favors, which reduces you to a beggar.
There's no middle ground.
None. The compromise of your authentic self is the specific action that tramples your dignity. The text is basically demanding that we audit our lives and identify every single area where we are secretly begging for validation, status, or security from systems that do not actually care about our spiritual well-being.
Okay, this theory is fascinating, but it begs a massive practical question.
Sure.
If having any expectations of the outside world makes you a beggar, what does a life devoid of those expectations actually look like? We're talking about ascetic monks sitting silently in a cave somewhere?
Not exactly. The author actually brings in a real-world example, pointing to a community attempting to live this out right now, the Lifechanyuan.
Okay, so tell me about them.
The text mentions that the Lifechanyuan community has existed for 20 years. It refers to its members as Chanyuan Celestials.
Chanyuan Celestials. Okay.
Right. It's a term used to describe individuals who are actively striving for this state of spiritual aristocracy. The text also notes they walk the way of the greatest creator.
Which means what exactly?
Well, while the essay doesn't explicitly outline a full theology, greatest creator operates here as the ultimate philosophical or spiritual truth they align themselves with. It's a truth that supersedes any human-made laws, cultural trends, or economic systems.
I see. And the practical rules of survival for these Chanyuan celestials are super intense and uncompromising.
Very much so.
The text states their survival relies strictly on diligence and wisdom. They completely refuse to engage in bribery or criminality, and they absolutely reject the pursuit of luxury.
None of it.
Right. No luxury cars, no sprawling mansions, no yachts, gold or jewelry.
And they also enforce radical social equality.
Right. Whether they are interacting with a president, a famous celebrity, a spiritual master, or just an ordinary citizen, everyone receives the exact same treatment.
No fawning over anybody.
Exactly. But the concept that really anchors their lifestyle is this specific mantra of invulnerability. The text translates it as, there is no door.
Yes. There is no door is such a brilliant psychological metaphor for neutralizing leverage.
What do you mean by leverage?
Well, the author explains that if someone tries to suppress these individuals, there is no door. If someone tries to threaten or tempt them, there is no door.
Okay, I think I get it.
Yeah, if society attempts to buy them with money or force them with restrictions, there's just no door. When you strip away your desire for wealth, status, and external approval, you simultaneously strip away all the handles society uses to grab onto you and control you.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
You cannot bribe a person who places zero value on money.
Exactly.
You cannot blackmail someone with a threat to their reputation if they literally do not care what the public thinks of them. They have boarded up all the entrances that manipulation usually walks through.
And that brings us to how they govern themselves, which is where the text introduces the tour guide metaphor.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
It does. According to the essay, within the Lifechanyuan, no one is allowed to impose their will on anyone else. Leadership is decentralized and entirely voluntary.
Like a tour guide.
Right, likened to a tour guide leading a group of tourists. A guide only leads those who are willing to follow. They don't have the authority to coerce the group.
And on the flip side, a tourist, or a crown of Chanyuan celestial, cannot kidnap or restrict the guide.
Exactly. The operational rule is remarkably simple. If you think the tour guide is fun, play together. If not, the tour guide doesn't want to play with you.
It sounds like a completely decentralized social network, but for real life. You follow the tour guide if you enjoy the tour, but you can just hit unfollow and walk away with zero hard feelings or coercion.
And this structural design directly supports the no-beggar philosophy.
How so?
By removing obligatory hierarchies, they dismantle the very mechanisms that force people to compromise their dignity. Think about a traditional corporate environment. If you profoundly disagree with your boss's ethics or strategy, you often have to swallow your pride, smile, and comply because you need the paycheck to pay your mortgage.
Yeah, you're trapped.
Right. The structural hierarchy forces you into the beggar role. In the tour guide dynamic, that structural incentive to fawn is just gone. If you disagree, you simply walk away. No coercion, no forced loyalty.
As liberating as that sounds, we do need to push back a little on the reality of applying this tour guide metaphor to the broader world.
Sure, it's a fair question to ask.
Because it sounds like a beautifully decentralized opt-in society. But human life is incredibly messy. It requires immense non-voluntary coordination.
Logistically speaking, yeah.
If society runs entirely on a zero obligation, only follow if it's fun model. Who manages the emergency rooms? Who builds and maintains the sewage systems?
A hard job.
Right. And how do you even raise a child? That's essentially an 18-year obligation where you absolutely cannot just unfollow the tour guide when it gets difficult. Can a society actually function without any obligatory hierarchies? Or is this philosophy only possible in a highly insulated micro-community?
The logistical application to global infrastructure is definitely where the framework faces its hardest stress test.
Definitely.
But I think the author seems less concerned with the logistical statecraft of running a global civilization and entirely focused on the spiritual survival of the individual.
Interesting. So they're just not worried about the sewers.
Pretty much. The text implies that the current system, the one that builds the roads and runs the hospitals, is powered by people trading their souls for stability. The author might argue that if a system requires you to act as a beggar to keep it running, the system itself is fundamentally corrupt and spiritually bankrupt. The focus here is on the individual's spiritual autonomy, even if the logistical implications of a world full of Chanyuan celestials remain largely unanswered in this specific essay.
That tension makes the author's next point even more crucial. Because if breaking away from these societal structures leads to ultimate spiritual freedom, why do so few people actually do it?
Right. Why are we all still stuck?
Yeah, why are 95% of us still on the treadmill? And the author explains the mechanics of this trap using two very vivid metaphors: the fisherman and the devil's whirlpool.
This raises an important question about human psychology. The fisherman metaphor gets right to the heart of why we willingly surrender our independence.
Walk us through it.
The author asks the reader to observe how a fisherman operates. He doesn't just throw an empty hook into the water. He hangs bait on the hook specifically, bait that the fish naturally likes to eat.
So the fish swims by, sees the bait, and doesn't see a trap. It just sees a cheap, easy meal.
Exactly.
The fish literally thinks it would be a waste of an opportunity not to eat it.
Yeah.
But the moment the fish swallows that easy meal, the hook sets and its life is effectively over. The author uses this to explain how society disguises its traps as opportunities for success.
The mechanism of the trap is what matters here. Society doesn't usually force you into the beggar role through outright violence, you know.
Yeah.
It lures you in with comfort. And the text elevates this concept to the metaphor of the devil. The author writes that the devil and his son and grandson use money, power, fame, status, beauty, and small favors as bait to fish for people.
And we just rush toward these things because human biology and psychology are basically wired to seek security and social elevation.
Yeah, we can't help ourselves.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We see a shiny new promotion, a verified checkmark on social media, or an exclusive invitation, and our brain says, take it, it's a free meal.
But it's not free.
No. The essay describes these baits as a whirlpool. Once you get sucked into the swirling current of wanting more, you lose your joy, your happiness, your contentment, and ultimately your dignity.
And the text states that entering this whirlpool bars you from the gate of heaven, which in this context feels less like a literal afterlife and more like a state of absolute inner peace.
So you're locked out of your own peace.
Exactly. Let's unpack the psychology of that whirlpool because it really explains how the trap is maintained over an entire lifetime.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. The insidious nature of external validation is that it operates exactly like a treadmill. You take the bait and secure the impressive job title, but that new title comes with a new social circle, which requires a new standard of living.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Right. Suddenly, you have a larger mortgage and a luxury car payment. To maintain that lifestyle and the approval of your new peers, you have to work harder, compromise more of your free time, and perhaps ignore your own ethical boundaries just to please the executives above you.
Wow.
You thought you were eating a free meal, but you actually swallowed a hook that pulls you deeper into the whirlpool.
So you become a permanent beggar, constantly asking the whirlpool to keep you afloat.
Yeah.
And you do it voluntarily.
Yeah.
You trade the permanent, quiet dignity of self-reliance for the temporary, exhausting high of external validation. For anyone listening to this deep dive right now, this is where the text really demands a serious audit of your own life.
Highly recommend doing that audit.
Think about the things you are currently stressing over. Are they truly essential to your inner peace, or are they just bait on a hook? When you curate your life for social media, or when you bite your tongue at work because you want a bonus, are you trading your spiritual autonomy for a small favor?
The author's conclusion pulls all of these threads together into this sweeping indictment of human history.
It's a big finish.
It really is. The core thesis states that thousands of years of mankind's history prove that material aristocrats and power aristocrats simply cannot bring true freedom, peace, dignity, or happiness to humanity.
Because they are all fundamentally trapped in the whirlpool themselves? The billionaire and the politician might be at the top of the food chain, but they're still swimming in the exact same water. They're still driven by demands, expectations, and the need to maintain their power.
They're just beggars wearing nicer suits.
Beggars in nice suits. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the text concludes, spiritual aristocrats, those very few individuals who have cut the cord, who have zero demands on the world, and who can look at any temptation or threat and confidently say there is no door, those people are the true and only hope of humanity.
It is a radical framework that completely challenges our deepest assumptions about power.
Yeah.
We're conditioned to believe that power resides in the ability to exert influence over others and the physical world. But this essay argues that true power is the exact opposite.
Right.
True power is the absolute refusal to let the world exert influence over you. It's the mastery of the self rather than the mastery of others.
Which leaves us with a profound paradox to consider. Throughout this deep dive, we've explored the liberating appeal of becoming a spiritual aristocrat, of shedding every expectation and achieving total self-reliance.
It sounds great in theory.
It does. But let's return to the tension we discussed earlier regarding the tour guide metaphor and the reality of human connection.
Right, because the text pushes us toward a state of having absolutely zero demands on the outside world. But we have to ask ourselves, what is the logical endpoint of that philosophy?
What happens when everyone does it?
Exactly. If being a true spiritual aristocrat means making zero compromises and expecting absolutely nothing from anyone else, does that ultimately build a society of perfect freedom, or does it create a society of total isolation?
Can humanity actually survive, let alone thrive and find meaning, if we eradicate all mutual need? If the president is a beggar for needing the people and a professor is a beggar for needing the university, if we all stop needing each other entirely, what are we left with?
It's a heavy question.
We might finally build an impenetrable fortress of the mind, completely safe from the whirlpool. But sitting alone inside that fortress with no one to rely on, it sounds perfectly free, but maybe profoundly lonely.
Definitely something to chew on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep examining the structures around you, keep asking the hard questions about the bait you might be chasing, and we'll see you next time.